Bom dia a todos, sejam bem-vindos a esse webinar de lançamento da nova estratégia da Bonsucro. É um prazer para a gente ter todos vocês aqui. Meu nome é Lívia Inácio, eu sou gerente da Bonsucro aqui no Brasil, responsável por atender essa grande comunidade brasileira que tem muito interesse, né, em sustentabilidade no setor sucroenergético. E hoje a gente está aqui para apresentar para vocês o novo plano estratégico da organização. Eu estou aqui também com os meus colegas, a Danielle Morley, que é a nossa CEO, que vai apresentar esse plano para vocês hoje. Estou com o meu colega Nicolas, que é nosso diretor de padrões e de inovação, e também com o Miguel Hernandes, que é nosso diretor para a América Latina, e com a Liz, nossa gerente de comunicação. Tá? Antes da gente dar início, eu vou só fazer algumas considerações iniciais para a logística, né, para a boa logística do nosso webinar. Então, todos vocês estão entrando automaticamente no mudo. Esse webinar ele tem tradução simultânea disponível, então agora a gente está falando em português aqui na abertura, mas a apresentação vai ser conduzida pela Danielle em inglês, tá? Então, a partir do momento que eu terminar de falar aqui e passar a palavra para ela, vocês podem selecionar o canal no botão Interpretation ou Interpretação, na barra inferior do Zoom de vocês, para selecionar o canal do idioma que vocês desejam, tá? Esse webinar também está sendo gravado e vai ser disponibilizado para todos posteriormente, junto com o material. E ao longo da apresentação, fiquem à vontade para ir colocando perguntas ou comentários, usando o botão de Q&A do Zoom, e ao final a gente vai olhar para todas as perguntas e comentários e conversar um pouquinho, tá bom? Então, a partir de agora, por favor, selecionem aí o idioma que vocês desejam escutar. And thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Danielle. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today to hear about our new Bonsucro strategy for the period 2021 to 2026, which we are calling Changing for Good. We've set out our agenda for change to deliver more value to our members and stakeholders and make a bigger impact with sustainable sugarcane. And our new strategic plan, you will see it builds on our many achievements to date, but we've also taken account of all the lessons learned. So how did we develop our strategy? It's not been a top-down process. We developed our strategy very collaboratively and iteratively. We took inputs from our many members, from external stakeholders. We discussed it with our staff. We talked to our members' council and our technical advisory board, and the Bonsucro board of directors were very engaged throughout the whole strategy development process. So it was really an inclusive collaboration. We were supported by a small team of consultants from Change Agency, but it's our own strategy. It took us many months to get right and lots of Zoom calls. And I now believe we have a strategic plan that we can be proud of. And I'm really looking forward to having your feedback on what do you think. So I'll take the next 40 minutes or so to take you through some of the key highlights from the strategic plan, and we will have time at the end for questions. All the material is available on our website. We have a shorter version of the strategic plan and a longer version of the strategic plan available in English and in Portuguese. So I'll start at the beginning with a summary of our baseline analysis. As with any strategic planning process, where are we now? We reviewed the progress of Bonsucro, and we saw that we'd made real progress over the last strategy period. We've grown our membership, we've strengthened our systems, and we've achieved many of our goals. And we can be proud now that almost 5% of all land grown under sugarcane is certified Bonsucro. We have global reach. We have certified mills in 19 countries, including in all the largest sugarcane origins in the Americas and Asia Pacific, as well as a growing pool of committed buyers who together represent at least 20% of the global demand for sugar. And we also have our fastest growing sector is buyers in the new and emerging sectors based on the bio-based economy. So this reach our reach and our local presence provides, we think, a really strong foundation to go further and address some of the complex systemic issues that certification of farms and mills cannot solve alone. We reviewed our baseline information about the environmental impact that Bonsucro has made working with our members. And we have the metrics that prove that there are significant environmental benefits of the Bonsucro standard for certified mills. We can see a very significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, for example, 31% at farm level and 20% reduction in GHG over the first 4 years of certification. And we want to continue to build on that success and achieve more with certified mills, but also share those learnings with the wider sugarcane sector to address the climate emergency as well as the water crisis. And I'll talk more about that later in the presentation. In Brazil, for example, our research with Agriconi on our business case study showed us that, for example, Bonsucro certified mills have on average a 20% reduction in the cost of water use. So there's significant environmental benefits from Bonsucro certification. And of course, there was a scientific paper published about 3 years ago that was a peer-reviewed piece of science where models indicated that global adoption of the Bonsucro standard would halve GHG emissions from sugarcane production and reduce water use by 65% and nutrient loading by 34%. So we have a standard that really can make, through the implementation, significant environmental impacts. And on the social side, while we celebrate progress made on social standards and the respect for human labour and human rights in our standard, and we have really good metrics to demonstrate, for example, in Brazil, an 80% reduction in accidents. We can see that the production standard also contributes to higher wages in the sector. Global average is 21% above the legal minimum wage are paid by certified mills. And we have our code of conduct that commits all of our members, not just the certified members, but all of our members to respect human rights. But we want to take that further and we want to achieve more and engage also with the wider sector on the social agenda. And then on production and uptake, our data showed there's an increased volumes of certified sugarcane coming onto the market. And of course, that also equals greater impact on the ground. Bonsucro's certified sugar production reached 6.2 million tonnes, and Bonsucro's certified ethanol reached 2.7 million metric meters, coming from 121 certified mills in 19 countries. Now, Brazil still dominates the Bonsucro certified scene with approximately 2/3 of certified sugar produced. So, of course, speaking to you today as our Brazilian stakeholders, you're a very, very important constituency for Bonsucro, and I'm really pleased to see so many people on the call. We also know and can demonstrate that the buyers are buying more certified Bonsucro products than ever before across more of a diversified range of sugarcane products. But the ratio of supply and demand does still remain at around 20%. And we want to help create and facilitate that to go up higher than the 20% ratio to create more value to our members and particularly for the producers. And we know from the economic evaluation and research we did with the Agriconi business case study that we published a few months ago, which did an economic evaluation of the impact of Bonsucro in Brazil. We can see that Bonsucro certification does pay off economically for certified producers. The benefits outweigh the costs, but that could be further improved if we can grow more sales of certified volume. And we also saw from that study that the cost benefit ratio is more advantageous for those Bonsucro certified mills that also have the Renova Bio certification, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. And then we look globally at the positioning of Bonsucro. Where does Bonsucro sit in the world of sustainability standards and sustainability initiatives for sugarcane? And we are pleased and proud to say that we are the only sugarcane sustainability initiative that combines all of those characteristics listed on the slide. We have an exclusive focus on sugarcane, and we will continue to have an exclusive focus on sugarcane. We're not going to expand into other crops. We are a very credible standard. We have a very credible system of assurance. We are fully code compliant with the ISEAL body, which is the umbrella organization of all the world leading sustainability standards. We sit there and we're fully code compliant with a very credible and transparent standard system. We have this focus on continuous improvement, both in our approach to certification, but also in everything else that we do. We have global reach, as I demonstrated through our membership base, and we also have local presence with our team and of course with our members. We're multi-stakeholder. It's very much part of our DNA. We're multi-stakeholder membership. We're proudly multi-stakeholder also in our governance structure. And we have taken a broader role as a platform for change, working beyond the boundaries of certification. And then we also, in our baseline, we researched the global context. What are the global trends? What's material for Bonsucro for this next strategy period? And of course, as we know, we are situated right now in 2021 in a very dynamic and urgent global context. The UN are calling this the decisive decade of action on climate and on the environment, when government and society is collectively failing to make sufficient progress, not just on climate, but across all those global development goals. We were, of course, concerned about the impact of COVID. Would this undermine our collective efforts to more sustainability? But thankfully, despite that disruption of COVID, we can see that the global drive for more sustainable supply chains continues across all the key sectors, and definitely in our sector, in the food, drinks, fuels and packaging sectors where we are working. We also looked at financial flows, and we assessed that financing sustainable growth and the transition to a decarbonised and climate resilient economy will become an overarching theme for investors over the next 5-10 years and beyond. The UN estimated that just before COVID, approximately $1.3 trillion was being invested in sustainability, a significant amount of money, although not as much as is needed. There's still a big financing gap. But post-pandemic, the UN also expects those large financial flows to continue and hopefully to grow. On the human rights and social standards side, meeting the minimum, at least the minimum standards of human rights and the social agenda will become increasingly important and scrutinized for the private sector. And for the first time, our issues, our ESG issues, are moving beyond reputation and supply chain resilience risks, which is where we're more familiar incentives to change, to becoming really core financial and legal compliance risks, because governments are now assessing and developing not just policies, but also regulatory frameworks to manage these important ESG issues within supply chains. In Europe, for example, there's an emerging piece of legislation that's coming through this year called the EU Green Deal, which is the largest legislative initiative of the European Union for a long time, focused entirely on making sure that supply chains, well, it's a whole package, but one of them is going to be making sure that the European supply chains beyond the European Union borders comply with core ESG due diligence requirements, and that will have a significant impact. And then we also looked at the market data, the production and consumption market trends and forecasts in the sugar and ethanol markets, and we dug into the biofuel, bioplastic and biomaterial market trends. And we know that sugar will continue to account for 75% of the end uses of sugarcane, but of course, as you know, there's going to be considerable growth in its use as a biofuel, in plastics and in packaging. So what did that mean for Bonsucro? We took all of that information, we took our stakeholder engagement, as well as our discussions with our members and the desk-based research, and we derived the key inputs that were most material to Bonsucro for our strategy. We wanted to make sure that we remain relevant and purposeful within the current and emerging global and regional and national contexts. And we want to continue to deliver value to all of our members, and we have a very diverse membership, and we want to build an adaptable and resilient and data-driven Bonsucro to meet the needs of the future. So we took all that information and we created, I'll now introduce you to our overarching strategic framework before diving into more details on what it all means. So we created our strategy wheel. The strategy is built around a newly defined purpose. The purpose statement is in the dark blue at the center of the wheel, and it says, to collectively accelerate the sustainable production and uses of sugarcane. So we're very clear here that we're all about working together in partnership with others. We're very clear here that we want to address the urgency and to accelerate everything that we're doing. And we're also clear that we want to work, yes, on the production side, but across the whole of the sugarcane value chain. So that is the new Bonsucro purpose statement. And then this will be delivered and supported by our 3 strategic aims, which are in the circle, the next circle out, the slightly lighter blue circle. The 3 strategic aims to improve the environmental impact of sugarcane, to strengthen human rights and decent work, and to create value in sugarcane supply chains. They are non-hierarchical and interdependent and mutually reinforcing strategic aims. And I will take you through each of them and their high-level objectives. Implementation will be designed around 5 strategic priorities, which are in the light blue, and will be delivered through the 6 activity work streams, which are shown here in the green circle, and underpinned by our 4 core operating principles, which are in orange. So I'll start off on the outer circle of our core principles. We have now for the first time defined what are our core Bonsucro principles to guide our operations and our decision making. They are collaboration, inclusivity, credibility, adaptability. Collaboration, as I mentioned, is part of our purpose statement. It's central to our identity as a multi-stakeholder platform and to the way we work as a secretariat and with our members. Inclusivity. We need to become more inclusive if we want to really drive sector-wide transformation beyond certification via newer strategic partnerships with different actors, including governments. And we want to build more inclusive and diverse sustainable supply chains and a more inclusive and diverse Bonsucro. Credibility. Credibility is fundamental to the way we operate our standard system. And as I mentioned, we are a proud ISEAL co-compliant member, but credibility also underpins a lot of other things that we do in our operations. And as a small and medium-sized enterprise, an SME, adaptability is part of our organization. We learn and we grow continuously to become to continue reflecting and iterating, and also to be more resilient to unforeseen events. So moving on to our 3 strategic aims, I'll start with create value in the supply chain. We want to create value for mills and farms across the supply chain and across the supply chain, including buyers and end users, as well as others with a stake in our sector in making the sector more sustainable, such as governments, financial institutions, and civil society. Our objectives here are to increase the supply and demand of certified sustainable sugar, ethanol and derivatives, to make more inclusive and sustainable value chains, to convene more impact and innovation projects, and to deliver added value to our members, including, for example, through better data and insights. We have listed out on the slide our targets. We've created a dashboard of some high-level global targets. I'm not going to go into the targets in the presentation, but if you refer to our strategic plan, you will see the baseline, the indicators and the baseline, and the targets are all there. And I will go into some more detail on some of those specifics in a couple more slides. So the next strategic aim is to improve the environmental impact of sugarcane. We know that environmental issues are a really high priority for our members and partners, and many of them have very specific commitments to reducing the negative impacts or improving through regenerative agriculture and water replenishment, etc. And also many of our members have made commitments to contribute to meet the Paris Agreement on climate change. We want to work at a sector level because it's clear that the sugarcane sector globally needs to step up and play its role along with some of the other key commodity sectors in the world in developing pathways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the Paris Agreement on climate change. So our objectives here are to drive climate action in the sugarcane sector, to improve water security and water stewardship, and to improve biodiversity and soil health. We'll be doing this, yes, through certification, but also through working collectively in strategic partnerships with our members and with others. And our 3rd strategic aim is to strengthen human rights and decent work in sugarcane production. We have our code of conduct, which calls on all members to respect human rights. And we know there is this growing spotlight on social and labour aspects of the sugarcane supply chain. We also know that much of the world's sugarcane is grown in countries with less than optimal standards for agricultural workers, where agricultural working conditions are poor, and that the Bonsucro standard provides a really good framework for producers to improve, and that certification enables members to reduce risk and to demonstrate and keep pace with market demands, regulatory demands, investor and consumer demands on this space. We have proof that Bonsucro certified mills demonstrate no child labour, forced labour or discrimination, and that over time operators achieve significant lower accident rates. We also know that, as I mentioned, wages on certified farms are significantly above national minimum wages. So we want to work on increasing wages in sugarcane farming and milling, improve accidental health and safety, and enhance respect for human rights. We want to drive the decent work agenda to ensure, for example, safe recruitment for migrant workers, reduction in discrimination, and to promote fairer wages for the lowest paid people in farming and milling through piloting living wages in specific origins. And we'll do these living wage pilots in partnership with willing members and others. So those were our 3 strategic aims, and now I'll go into a bit more detail around our 5 strategic priorities. So standards are our core business and will continue to be Bonsucro's core business. And we'll use the next 5 years to continue to strengthen, improve and innovate our system of third-party assurance. We're going to be publishing the revised Bonsucro production standard, updating the smallholder standard, drawing on lessons learnt and adapting it to the new production standard. We want to take another look at social auditing and strengthen our social auditing capabilities, working with our accreditation body, ASI, and with the certification bodies. And we know that we can make a bigger impact if we align and benchmark with other standards, both on the production side, but also on the market side. So we want to do more of that, but we want to focus on those bigger strategic partnerships where we can make a bigger impact and where it makes sense to us. For example, for Brazil, we see a really important opportunity with RenovaBio, and we are working together with ANP, looking at developing, putting in place a memorandum of understanding to start a process of alignment between Bonsucro and RenovaBio. And we'll be seeking other such opportunities in other origins over the coming period to really help to grow the market for Bonsucro certification. And we see particular opportunities in the emerging carbon space. So we also see as a strategic priority to support the growers and mills on their sustainability journey. And we want to achieve this through developing a stepwise approach to certification. This is in line with our principles of becoming more inclusive. And it will also help us to scale up sustainable sugarcane within the Bonsucro system. We haven't published yet how we're going to approach, what our stepwise approach is going to be. Some elements of it will be worked on over the next few years, and there are some principles of stepwise that you will see in the new Bonsucro production standard draft that is going to be out for public consultation in the coming weeks. How else can we support our growers and mills? Well, we can also work on impact projects. And in recent years, we've started to invest more into projects and programs, and we're going to build that up over this strategy. We see there's a lot of potential there and a lot of demand there. And we have the ambition to grow our impact funding over the strategy period to $7 million US. And this will be financed through income from our credit trading, and also we aim to leverage additional grant funding. And we want to expand our technical support to members and intend also to facilitate access to data and to metrics for certified mills to help our certified mills access green finance initiatives by providing improved data and analytics that financial institutions are requesting. Our third strategic priority is to build the supply and demand for sustainable sugarcane. It's part of our commitment to creating value. So we want to prioritize market development into the new sectors, into the bio-based sectors, and for example, we're seeing a lot of interest at the moment in the rum sector, as well as looking at some of the emerging markets where there's large consumer demand for sugar. And of course, continuing to do market development in the more traditional sectors of Europe and North America. We also think that there's opportunities for Bonsucro's metric standard to become an accepted standard for compliance by financial institutions and by governments. We want to develop our Bonsucro credit trading further. We have proof of concept. Our digital trading platform is delivering well, but we want to improve it and to refine it and to try and drive uptake of credit trading and provide the buyers with what they need to incentivize them to buy more credits. So for example, if we can provide more stories of change and impact stories to the buyers. Next, another priority, to convene the sector to meet these complex challenges. I've spoken about this, about our ambitions to play a more significant convening role. And in order to do that, we need to build our capabilities to deliver in policy and influencing and communications. So we want to address these complex issues where we think we can play a role working with our members, working with partners collectively, beyond single interest groups, beyond single value chains, and working in partnership on climate action to meet the Paris Agreement, on water stewardship, and on social and labour conditions, and specifically on heat stress, on migrant labour, on living wages, and on gender equality. And finally, underpinning all of that, we want to be investing in the promoting of knowledge, best practice, and innovation. We want to improve our monitoring and evaluation systems and impact reporting. We want to help unlock value, greater value from our data and analytics, and provide supply chain mapping to our members. And we want to also continue to contribute to research and research partnerships. So we also have dedicated another chapter in our strategic plan, when you have a chance to read it, called Making It Happen, where we drill down even further from those strategic priorities into how we will bring those strategic priorities to life. I won't go into detail for the sake of time, but just to refer you to the fact we have this Making It Happen chapter, which covers all of these areas, most of which I've mentioned, apart from perhaps I haven't spoken too much about digitalization and data, but that's in there. It's something we're really keen to improve. We've already made good headway in developing some digital products, in improving our data capabilities, and we're going to build on that as well. So that's our global strategy. And so how does this relate to the regions, and how does this relate to Brazil? So just to be clear, we will be retaining our global headquarters in London, but we also are going to be growing our regional capacity to deliver in the origins where it counts, and particularly in Asia Pacific, for Central America, and of course for Brazil, where we have so many members and such great engagement. Our work in all the origins needs to be consistent with the priorities, the strategic aims and the strategic priorities, but of course tailored to optimize what's happening at the national level. And in the strategic plan, we've outlined some of the priorities, which are here for you, a selection of priorities for Brazil. So in Brazil, we want to be engaging with certification schemes and frameworks for sustainable sugarcane. We want to be engaging more local buyers into membership as well, and to become certified. We want to explore if there's a way to use the Bonsucro methodology to generate carbon credits and to work in collaboration to reduce GHG emissions and increase resilience to climate change. And we want to work in coordination with the financial institutions to translate the concept of payment for environmental services into better financing programs using the Bonsucro standard as a recognized mechanism. We have a lot more to share with you. This is just a selection of our provisional objectives for Brazil, and I refer you to our plan for more details. So how are we going to do all of this? Well, we know we can't spread ourselves too thin. We do want to double down on investment in places where we already do have an existing strong footprint. And And our ambition is to double the size of the organisation over the next 5 years, to bring new capabilities into our regional teams, operating systems, our data and analytics, to increase our capacity in communications and policy and project funding. And we will resource this through income from our membership fees, from new partnerships and grants, and from credit trading. So in summary, we're going to continue to support you, our members. We'll continue to work exclusively on sugarcane and value chains, sugarcane value chains. We're going to continue to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, to maintain governance structures. We're not going to change our governance structures, but we do want to make improvements where appropriate, and to deliver our internationally recognised Bonsucro standard. What are we going to strengthen? We're going to strengthen our work on creating value to members and to other stakeholders, our focus on climate change and water and biodiversity, our contribution to human rights and decent work, our support for smallholders. We want to do more in terms of increased investments and working in partnerships on those impact projects. We want to build market development for Bonsucro uptake. We're going to be looking at digitization and monitoring and evaluation, and of course, our influencing and communications capacities. So we have, that's our part of our change agenda too. How are we going to build Bonsucro organisational capability to deliver on our aims and priorities? So as you can see, we really want to make a bigger impact with sustainable sugarcane. We do believe in the future of Bonsucro certification, and we also are going to be convening more broadly across the sector to become a force for change and address some of the more complex systemic issues. And me and the team warmly invite you to join us on the journey. Thank you for listening. I'm at the end of the presentation, and we can now continue with Q&A.
Thank you, Danielle, for the presentation. So now I'm gonna start looking at the Q&A box. So feel free to pop in your questions using the Q&A button. There is already one question from Isabella Diaz. Thank you, Isabella, for your question. She's asking whether the new production and chain of custody standard will be valid. What is the date for the standards to be implemented, and what it means, what do we mean by social auditing? If this term, social auditing, is a new requirement within the certification. Danielle, not sure if you want to take that one, or if Nicholas, if you would like to answer this one.
Yeah, I mean, so social auditing, it's not a new requirement, but basically it's a recognition that we would like to enhance the technical capabilities, working with the CBs to ensure our systems are also continuously improving around making sure that when audits happen and when certification happens and when audits happen, the relevant stakeholders have been consulted and taken into account and done appropriately. So the new standard has strengthened some criteria around those requirements, and that will feed into the new certification protocol as well. The timeline for the new production standard is to have that finalized in September this year. And then there'll be a period of time before which it becomes mandatory. The chain of custody was revised just a couple of years ago, so we're not due to revise the chain of custody standard quite yet.
Thank you. There are a couple more questions coming in the chat. I'm going to start with the one from Iracy. How Bonsucro intends to expand our credit trading system?
How do we intend to expand it? Well, we want to always make sure that anybody that wants to contribute or participate in the credit trading knows what to do. So we're continuously supporting members sort of onboarding and so on, registering, showing them how to use it. So it's any certified producer has the ability to do that. But then in terms of uptake, we want to try to demonstrate to the buyers, because the buyers have a decision to make, should we invest in buying credits or should we invest directly in our own supply chain on improvements? And we think that there's more that we could do to join up the dots between a buyer purchasing credits and demonstrating to the buyer what's changed, what are they contributing to, what's the story of change in that particular mill. So they're buying credits off that mill. What is the mill doing? What's its story around sustainability? Because oftentimes the buyers will try to use that, would like to use that in some of their corporate communications. It provides added value. So we think there's more that we can do there in terms of that market development. Yeah.
Great. So I think you've brilliantly explored the buyer side and how Bonsucro intends to expand the market and the market uptake. There's another question here, looking more at the production side, when we've mentioned that Bonsucro is going to work with the members and the certified members to reduce costs for certification. So Paolo is asking how we intend to do that. How do we intend to work with the members to reduce costs for certification? Thank you, Paolo.
Yeah, so look, I don't have all the answers right now. I think with our strategic plan, what we've done is set out our agenda. So this is what our intention is, and we'll have a pipeline. We'll develop our pipeline of implementation over the next 5 years. We don't have all the answers to reduce costs, but it's certainly something that we recognize needs to be worked on, and it will be different in different places. And one of the reasons we did the business case study for Brazil is to really try and have that data to understand what are the costs and what are the benefits of Bonsucro data, and where we can make more efficiencies, what can Bonsucro influence, what can Bonsucro not influence.
And coming back to the new standards work, there's also a question here for me to see whether the members will have trainings about the changes in the standard, and what is the expectation around that.
Okay, so yes, there definitely will be trainings around the new standard. I don't know if Nicholas would like to comment. I know he's on the Portuguese channel. I don't know if he can.
And just repeat the question.
The question.
Yeah, go ahead, Danielle.
The question is about the new production standard. Somebody wants to understand how we're going to support members as we roll it out, the training and so on.
Well, thank you very much. So we are going to work in improving our training offers around the new standard. So the launch of the new standard is for us the opportunity to rethink and to improve the various training that we are providing and that we have provided over the last now decades, from having very tailored training to producers, and how now we have engaged in working in collaboration with Bonsucro approved trainers, licensed training providers. So we want to really use this expertise and more local expertise on how to deliver efficient training to get more adaptable and easily accessible training offer to the various community of users, being the farmers, being the millers in various origins.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Thanks, Nicholas. Taking the opportunity, Nicholas, that your mic is on, there was this other question from André Valente from Raizen on Bonsucro's plans to maintain its full recognition, making sure that the standard is aligned with policies worldwide and so on. And we've seen that you have answered this question in written, but if you would like to comment so that everybody also knows.
Yes, no, indeed, it's a strategy to continue to offer flexibility and value to our members who become certified. And for that, and we've done that for the last 10 years, is being recognized by the EU RED legislation for the export of ethanol into the EU market. And as it was successful to support our members in gaining some market share in the new market, we are looking as well how we can expand that offers according to the need of the market. We're listening to our members and tell us whether you would like to see recognition. So we are exploring recognition with Renovavio and working in collaboration with them to test possibility of Renovavio recognition. And we had as well last year obtained recognition by the Dutch authorities for the export of solid biomass to the Netherlands.
Thank you. And also on the standard, there's also a question from Rafael Kalaki, wondering how the standard will align with this strategy and demonstrate a greater value to producers. Danielle, would you like to pick this one?
Sorry. Yes, the standard is being developed, has been developed. They started the standard revision before we started the strategy revision. We've been running in parallel. We've been ensuring that there is a cut across. But of course, the standard revision has its own governance system of having an expert working committee, of having a public consultation process, and so on. So we can't sort of copy and paste what's in the strategy straight into the standard, but we're pretty confident that they are mutually supportive because we know what's happening on the standard development. And we've been very careful to design the strategy to provide kind of direction, the direction of travel for Bonsucro, but to create enough space so that whatever comes out of the standard will still meet our goals. But we're pretty confident there's a clear alignment. Yeah.
Thanks. Another question from Mariana Pereira. How Bonsucro intends to address the previous challenges regarding the compliance of human rights standards and the local level. For example, here in the Brazilian case, some occasional crosscut with information provided by multiple stakeholders, such as the body of prosecutors.
Okay, so I don't know about the exact example provided, but in terms of compliance, I mean, if there is evidence of non-compliance with the Bonsucro standard. So within the Bonsucro standard, we have, required compliance with court ILO criteria, for example, and other human rights standards. And if there's evidence of a certified producer not complying, then that complaint can be made to Bonsucro, and we will escalate that first to the certification body who certified that producer, and then it can be also the complainant can also submit a complaint to our grievance mechanism. So we have developed alongside our new code of conduct a grievance mechanism which is based on concepts of dispute resolution and mediation, but is outsourced to an independent expert in conflict resolution and mediation. And potentially, if mediation cannot be achieved, it can go to arbitration. So this expert third party can make a decision based on the facts available to it. Is there evidence of non-compliance against Bonsucro's policies? And if there is, can make a decision on what happens next. So that's that process.
Good. And here comes a suggestion actually from Gabrielle. How is Bonsucro considering the variation of exchange from year to year? Because the members, they develop their own financial planning, and sometimes during financial crisis as the one that we're living now, they drive some variations in the exchange rates. And how is Bonsucro considering that? Yeah, that's more like a comment from Gabrielle.
Okay.
Good. Well, there's another one from this about the standard. but I think we have already answered that. Paolo, about the timeline for the standard, I think Nicholas has already answered that. It's not ready yet, but it's going to be launched in the coming months. And there is a time before audits start being run based on the new standard. So we're going to all be informed about the standards launch and its timeline. Here's one from Claudio on how aligned is Bonsucro's strategy about the maturity of RenovaBio legislation, since it's a voluntary policy for producers to engage, and other methodologies that cover GHG inventory, improving the coverage of Bonsucro certification in order to have a standard for GHG certification. So I think Claudio is asking more like how Bonsucro is working to be integrated with RenovaBio and other GHG inventory frameworks. Danielle or Nicholas, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, I think that's a very technical question that actually, that's going to be part of the work that we do now with the RenovaBio, right? Where we're looking at what's the technical aspects of alignment will be developed through this deeper dive that we do in the next phase. I don't think I have a definitive answer at this point.
Claudio, just to add to that, 2 years ago, we have made a technical benchmarking with the RenovaBio certification, comparing both requirements, Bonsucro requirements and RenovaBio requirements. So we have a clear picture on how similar and how different they are. And for us, RenovaBio is still voluntary for the producers, but it's mandatory when it comes to the Brazilian GHG targets for the distributors, as you know. And we're going to keep following up and understanding how the legislation, the RenovaBio as a legislation, will evolve. And that's part of the work that we are developing right now. And that's the only GHG, let's say, GHG certification scheme that Bonsucro is now trying to develop a joint protocol and starting to deliver work on that. Hopefully, we have answered your question. There's one from Aline on how Bonsucro intends to support the individual farmers to add value in the certification production beyond the credits.
Yeah, great question. Really important one that we spoke about in our strategy review as well. So there's improvements that are an output of Bonsucro certification because of the standard. So the standard drives performance improvement, and the standard will result in efficiencies at the farm level and cost reductions and input reductions and potentially improved yields and so on. So there'll be advantages that flow from implementation of the standard. In addition, it enables better the management of data and data collected through that process, and that can then and should then inform better decision making, and we want to help facilitate that through the provision of better metrics and dashboards of that data, and then also the potential to include independent farmers in impact projects. So one of the reasons why we want to increase the investment in impact projects is because we recognize that certification will not deliver, alone to independent farmers, and that there may be some pre-investment needed and capacity building and so on with farmers, depending on their needs. And we are doing that in many origins at the moment, in India, in Mexico. We've done projects in Thailand, and in Southern Africa. And the other thing that we're doing at the moment in Southern Africa and South Africa is we're working on a project at the landscape level, working with another standard system for cotton, sustainable sugarcane, farmers in the landscape, and then we are trying to align an approach collect the data and influence the financial institutions or engage with the banks who are potential sources of funding and investment for these farmers. So what we're trying to do is work with the financial institutions, work with the farmers, and facilitate ultimately access to that green finance by providing the certified farmers with the data that they need, providing the banks with the risk assessment, risk reduction, due diligence that they need, and making that connect. So that's something we want to do.
Right, and building on that question, that same question, Danielle, another one came from Rafael Kalaki. If we can maybe list some key actions, some concrete actions that the new strategy will create value, where the new strategy will create value for farmers, but actions that do not necessarily depend on the standard, if we can have that clarity.
To be honest, at this point in time, I would say that the standard underpins a lot of where we see we can drive value for farmers as a framework. So it may not be resulting in certification. It may be as a framework for improvement or a framework to access, for example, payment for environmental services opportunities. So these financial opportunities. And in addition, as I mentioned, the impact projects that we want to do. So by working together on improving standards, well, improvements, capacity building and so on through direct investment.
Great, and I think the last comment that we have here in the Q&A is from Andrea, again, just replying on that question around the alignment between the Bonsucro standards and local policies, that we should keep being engaged with these markets and without creating additional burden. And I think, Andrea, this is very well reflected in our adaptability key principle that we have seen, and that is very well embedded in this new strategy. So that's surely how we're going to work from now onwards. Thank you so much for your comment. And well, I think we don't have any more questions. Just before handing over to Danielle for the final remarks, thank you so much, everyone, for having attended this session. Please feel free to contact me for anything you need regarding the understanding of this new strategy, and I count on all of you guys to help us making this new strategy happen in Brazil. Danielle, over to you for the final remarks.
I mean, no particular final remarks beyond that, Livia. Thank you. Exactly that. You know, it's an ambitious strategy, but we think it's realistically ambitious. We've set out an agenda for change. We've also set out our rationale for that. We've put some detail around our sort of organisational growth plans. So I recommend, if you can, just take the time to have a look at what we've set out in our strategic plan. I'd really welcome your comments and feedback. Thank you for the great questions. And I look forward to continuing to work with you over the next 5 years and beyond. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.